Hey everyone. So it's the end of the week, Friday. Um, I've been missing many videos for a number of reasons, but I thought I'll continue with the series, the video series that I initially talked about, where I would talk about the things that are of importance and where a CISO's focus should be. So this is number two in the series, and the first video I talked about protecting your network infrastructure. Another thing that should be on a CISO's mind and should definitely be a focus for a CISO, because that's this falls under the responsibility and the realm of being a CISO. And the thing is about managing risk. Now, I'm speaking mainly managing risk in today's digital world, because there's a lot of risk management with a number of operations. So I'm talking about cybersecurity and digital presence. I'm talking about risk management with respect to that. So let's talk about things that are important for a CISO. So a number one thing, again, I'm looking at my notes. So a number one thing is for a CISO to manage risks and also be able to talk to current latest cybersecurity threats, um, security trends that's happening in the industry, in cybersecurity industry to be precise. Knowing these things and talking to them would help, and would help a CISO in terms of understanding how does it affect and what risk does the organization have against these trending security security threats. Another thing that a CISO should do for risk management especially is perform risk assessments. Now, these could take various forms, because a risk assessment could be quick and dirty. A risk assessment could be very detailed, but I would say for any organization, big or small, the idea and approach would be to put a risk assessment in place, even if it's bare bones. Have something, because you need to know if a certain thing poses, a certain threat poses a high risk or a low risk to the organization. Have something in place for your organization. And I would say the current trend with this is to have something on a continuous basis or continual basis, where you do a continual risk assessment. Just like in vulnerability management, you have a continuous vulnerability management. That's the new security trend that's going on there. So even with risk assessment, you have a continual risk assessment. So have something in place first, then think about doing this on a continual basis. Um, Another thing with respect to risk management for a CISO would be to have incident response plans. Now, these help to mitigate and sometimes remediate risks that do exist and do pose a threat to the organization. And if a certain negative incident does happen, you are able to reduce the risk and bring your organization back up to its normal operations as soon as possible with using these incident response plans. Another thing that a CISO would need to pay attention to when talking about risk management and assessments is knowing what your assets are. This is actually the number one thing when you start a risk assessment process, is to know what are your assets. And especially not just knowing what are your assets, because that's the complete view of holistic view of all your assets. I would say knowing all your assets, and then you would also need to know which are your important or high value assets, or in sometimes the terms use crown jewels. Like these are the most valuable assets in your organization. If these are at high risk or something happens to them, that affects your organization directly, not just the operations, not just a certain team or a certain on a certain day, but it affects your whole organization. So these are your most important assets. You would need to know all your assets, and especially these ones, because you would have to pay special attention for risks that are directed towards these assets. And so, like I said, perform your risk assessments on an ongoing basis. Have something in place if you could for a continual risk assessment. And in addition, I would say, to summarize this, I would say risk assessment is very, very important. Sometimes it could be very, very tedious, but I'd say if you have never done that or if you don't have something in place, start small. Start small, build it up. But do not start, do not hesitate starting just because you have never done it or it's too big of a task. Use small steps, start on the basics, build it up. But have something in place, because once you have something in place, it will make your life easier, especially when it comes to knowing if something poses a risk to the organization and what level of risk it poses to your organization. So that's my thought for today. That's a focus that a CISO should have for its organization. And I hope you have comments, you have experiences around risk management, risk assessments, and CISO's focus on risk, especially when it comes to our digital world. So let me know let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I shall catch up with you in the next video. All right. So have a good time, and see you soon.